Okay, so we got one more week of lecture for JavaScript. I'm not sure what your final assignment will be, but I'm thinking maybe we could do like a slideshow or something. Okay. So this is what we were doing yesterday, right? Created the stopwatch, which looks like this. We can start and stop and reset. Oh, one little bug that we have currently is if I start it, if I just click start one time, I can stop this and I can reset it. But if I click start, you can see it's counting 1, 2, 3 normal seconds, but click start again. All of a sudden it speeds up. Now it's going twice as fast. Click start again, it goes faster. More I click start, the faster it goes. And then stopping it doesn't work anymore. So just a minor bug. I'm sure we could fix it, but is it worth fixing right now? We could like disable this button while it's started so you can't click on it again. Or we can make sure it doesn't start a new loop, because yeah, we don't want that. Let me think about it. I'll just stare at it a few seconds and see if I can figure out how to solve that. So I'm just gonna open VS Code with this. Let's see. So every time I click start timer, it's gonna do a new set interval. It's gonna say ds interval equals set interval. And I thought, setting it to the same name would solve it, but I guess not. We could, I guess, what should we do? We can say if no ds interval. Let me see if this will work. Like check if there isn't already, or check if ds interval doesn't already have some sort of value. So this exclamation says check if this does not have a value. So that's like if I just said this, we would check if it already is running. But if I check this, we're checking if it's not running. Okay. And then I'll stick all this in there and see if that solves it. It might not. Let's find out. Start again, start again, stop. Yep, that fixes it. Alright, so okay, thankfully that was a simple fix. So all you need to do is check if ds interval does not already have a value, because here, let me show you what I just did in the browser. Actually, let's do it in this browser. I'm gonna refresh the page, and then I'm gonna check ds interval. Okay, so when I type ds interval, we get undefined. Undefined, we can check if ds interval, we can say something like ds interval has a value. Okay, since we're getting undefined, we know that this is evaluating to a false because it doesn't have a value, it's undefined. But if I click start and I check ds interval again, we see ds interval has a value. If I type ds interval, oops, not this interval, ds interval, we get a 1. So that evaluates to true, undefined is false. So I'm checking if not ds interval, then I'm saying ds interval does not have a value. So you see, if I reverse it and I put an exclamation in front of it, then this undefined, instead of evaluating to false, it becomes true because I put an exclamation. So this is true right now. ds interval does not have a value. Not value. So that was a quick fix. Alright, so if you did this yesterday, I mean I uploaded it, so you guys have the code. So Dayun and Camilo, just add a if statement right here. So originally this if was not there, it was just like this. So you just need to add an if not ds interval, then you can do all this stuff. Okay, I'll just take that, put it here. So you just have to put it all inside an if statement. Make sense? No more multiple loops and speeding up. Okay. Alrighty. And so we're looking at the notes yesterday. I think we're almost at the end of the notes. Okay, so we're all the way down here at the for loop. Past the for loop, we looked at while loop. You saw that while loop is a lot like a for loop. And then the for in loop is if you want to loop through all the keys of an object. Since an object is not an array, you can't use a regular loop with that one because it has no indexes. Instead, it has keys. So a for in loop is for looping through the keys. Okay, and I showed you an example how you could easily get the keys, but you could also get the values if you want, or you could get the keys and the values. For of loop is this one is for arrays. Okay, so the for in is the one that's for objects. Out of all these loops that we looked at, you can only use the for in for objects. For of is another one for arrays. So for of loop is used to iterate through all values, all property values of an iterable object using a variable. The specified statement is executed for each distinct value. So the way you write it is for variable of object, you have a statement. So example, we have let cars equal, it's an array, Honda, Ford, BMW. If you say for x of car, console.log x, you're gonna get Honda, Ford, and BMW. It's just gonna loop through it. But I'll just stick to for loops, or I'll use the for each, which we already talked about. So for each is an array method. So you write the array name first and then dot for each, and you have to put in a function inside the for each parentheses. And this function takes in, you could put in 3 different arguments in this. Right now it says element, that's just the one element that's gonna represent the index basically, or not the index, the array element itself. So whatever object it's looking at, if you console.log it, you could see whatever you're on. If you add a second one, I know I went over this yesterday, but let me just remind you real quick. So let's say we have an array. Let array equal, let's just say dog, dog, cat, bird. Okay, so if we look at array, it's just dog, cat, bird. So if I want to loop through each of these, I could use the for loop, or I could use a for each. I can say array dot for each, and then we put in a function inside here. Arrow function. Okay, so this arrow function you see here, the parentheses, arrow, this is the same thing as if I said function. That's the same thing. So instead of writing function like this, we just take the function word out and we put an arrow there. And then, so array dot for each, and we could put something in here like for each element, or for each animal, we could say, since these are all animals. Then we can, well, I wouldn't want to console log this because, again, console logging doesn't work in this console. So we could just type in animal, I think, or return animal. No, it's still gonna return undefined. We'd have to do it in in the HTML file, since I can't console log here. I don't know what the alternatives is for console logging. But yeah, that should, well, if you did console log animal in the HTML file, it would just give you each name. So that would be the same as array, or for let I equal 0, I is less than array dot length, I plus plus, and animal, basically same thing. Or not, sorry, that it wouldn't be animal anymore because we're not using a function here. You'd have to do array I. Okay, so in this case it does show it, but with the for loop it doesn't. But I think it's because the for each is a function. This is just a loop, so it just shows it here. But it's the same thing. Do you guys want to look at more examples of for loops, or for each, or any type of loop, or should we move on to the next subject? I don't know, I feel like you might need some more practice. Okay, let's create a new, well, I've got this loops folder. What do I put in here? Oh, I was doing this thing last time. Oh yeah, I said I would go over this more thoroughly. Let's do that. That involves a for loop. I'll do it from scratch, I guess, but let me just look at it real quick. Code dot. So I just have an images folder with a couple pictures and an index.html, and inside the HTML, all I have is this div with the ID of movies that I'm gonna insert stuff into. Okay, and then in my JavaScript, I create an array called movies array. And the array has two objects inside. The first object is title Godzilla vs. Kong, date 2021, and with its own image URL. And then we have another one, different movie title, different date, different image. But it's just two objects inside this array. So since it's an array, we can loop through it. So first I get the movie container with get element by ID, and then we say movies array dot for each, since it's, again, for each only works on arrays, and this is an array. So for each movie, I'm creating a div, an h2, an image, and a paragraph. I'm just creating these with document.createElement. That lets us create the element. But it doesn't put it anywhere. You're not going to see the element anywhere unless you append child into something. Append child lets you add, it lets you add an element, but it has to be an element. Append child only works with elements. If it wasn't an element, you could just do append. Okay, but append child, we use that because these are all elements. They're HTML elements. So but before I append them, I first add some text inside. So the h2 inner text is going to be the movie title. Remember, we created the h2. Now we're adding some text to it. The image, I'm setting the attribute, the source attribute to the movie image, image URL from here. And then the paragraph, I'm adding the date. And then I'm inserting the h2, the paragraph, and the image. I'm inserting all of these into the div that I created. And then I'm inserting the div into movies container, which is this element right here. And then that gives us this result. Okay, and then you could style that however you want. And this would be more proper way to do stuff like this if you're creating a website that has some movies in it. Maybe they're user submitted movies, so you might have some kind of a form that people can add movies to. Either, I don't know, could be an admin thing. You only let the admin do the movies, or you're making a website for someone that wants to be able to add stuff to their website just by filling out a form. You could create a form for them to fill out that will basically create an object like these, and then you can fetch that object using some JavaScript methods, like that fetch thing that I showed you yesterday. So you could fetch data from a database that you created, or it could be a public online database that's available to everyone that has a bunch of information like movie titles and stuff. So by fetching that and having some kind of a function here that creates an element for each of them and inserts it into the page, you could have a dynamic website basically. But I don't want to do any fetching or anything like that because I feel like that's a little advanced. So we'll do something more simple. Like I'll let you guys try doing this, creating your own object or array of objects. Since we did movies, let's think of a different one to do from scratch. So I'll delete all this stuff so we can do this from scratch. So I don't know, it'll make more sense again. So we're gonna want to start with index.html and exclamation tab. So just do that, and let's think of what we want to create for this one. How about let's do like a roster of employees with their phone numbers and stuff. I don't know. Maybe it's a company database. Okay, let's do that. Um, so if it's gonna be a company database, let's just create a fake title. Create an H1 here. Employee database. And I'll try to keep this side by side so we see what we're doing as we're doing it. I'm gonna minimize all this other stuff, but I'll zoom into the code here. By the way, if you want to be able to do that, I think I installed an extension that lets me do this. If I click anywhere outside of the code, like here, actually I don't think I even need to click anywhere. If I press Control plus on my number pad, the entire VS Code zooms in. But if I control and scroll my mouse wheel just in here, it only makes this code bigger. Pretty useful if you're streaming, I guess. And in case you're curious, what do I call it? It's called Easy Zoom. If you want to get that, you can see here: zoom in, mouse wheel, scroll up, keyboard Control plus. Anyway, let me zoom a little bit out. I'm too zoomed in. And let's open this on the side. Okay, so we're creating an employee database. I kind of picked a boring subject, but whatever. Let's give it some style. So I'll create a CSS folder and create. Actually, let's kill two birds with one stone and let's create. I don't know if we could do a slideshow. No, if we did a slideshow, I don't think it requires looping. So never mind. Let's just continue with this. I'll do a slideshow after. So I'll create a styles.css and let's just do h1 text align center, and let's link to that style sheet. So link rel equals style sheet, href equals css slash styles.css. Okay, so that's centered now. And then for the actual employee database, we'll put it inside a div. Give that div an ID equals employees. Okay, and then that's what we'll insert stuff into. So let's add our script now. And I'll do a script tag with the source equals, and then let's make a JavaScript folder now. So JS, inside JS, new script.js. So this is going to link to js/script.js. And that's it for the, well, for now anyway, that's it for the HTML. So just create a h1, a div, and a script tag. Okay, next let's go to the script tag. We need to grab this employees div here. So let employees container equal document dot get element by ID. And I gave it an ID of employees, so employees and then let's create an array of employees. So let employees equal, it's gonna be an array. Now it would be cool if I showed you how like we can create an empty array, and then maybe we could create a form to insert new employees. But as soon as you refresh the page, it's gonna clear again, and all those employees are gonna disappear. Unless we somehow store the employees in the browser's cookies, which I forgot how to do, but I think it's pretty easy storing cookies so that if you refresh the page, they'll still be there. But for now, let's just create a form, and then when you fill out the form, it will create an object and insert that object into employees. Oh, but sorry, we can't do that yet because that's also going to get into object-oriented JavaScript. Which I didn't get to yet. It's the next subject. So we'll keep it simple. So we'll just insert the employees manually. Anyway, so employee is going to be a bunch of objects. And each employee, what do we want it to have? We want it to have a first name, John, last name, Doe. We also want employee, maybe an ID. Let's go 1 0 0 1. Just make some fake ID. Like a phone number maybe. Might want 2 phone numbers, but we're not gonna get into it. It's not an actual database, so we don't need to make it realistic. But put 1 phone number for now, and probably do a string. So 555 555 5555. And I don't know, let's just stick with that for now. So that's 1 employee in the array. So after this employee, we're gonna put a comma and copy this, paste it a couple times. Let's see, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 employees. Let's just change each of their names. Sarah, Connor. This will be employee 1002 with different phone number. and then this will be employee 3, different phone number, and let's make some fake names. I don't know. Whatever. Okay, that's my 5 employees. So just make a array just like that with several objects in there with the same properties and different values. Okay, I'll give you a couple seconds to do that. Ready? Creating arrays and objects should be easy by now, right? Alright, so we have our employees container and we have our employees. We need to find a way to stick these employees into the employees container, but we need to have some sort of elements to stick them into. Like maybe we'll create a table or something, or just create some rows. We could use CSS grids maybe. So I'm thinking we'll do something like a CSS grid with, how many columns do we need? 1, 2, 3, 4 columns. So we'll just create a 4-column grid. So for that, we're gonna need a grid container, and I guess the employees will be the grid container. So we'll give this what do you call it? Display grid in the CSS for the employees. So we could go to styles and do that already. We can say hashtag employees. display grid template columns 1FR 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 1FR. Currently you're not gonna see anything because it's still empty, so now let's get to filling it up with something. You guys with me so far? Okay. Alright, so now we're gonna loop through each of these. So we could either use the for loop, or we could use a while loop, or we can use the for each on employees by typing employees dot for each. Which one you guys want to look at? We could do either one. I like using the for each because I'm just used to it. But the for loop is the first one we learned about. So if it doesn't matter to you guys, I'll just do the for each. So employees dot for each. Employees dot for each. And so for each, I'm gonna create our function inside. For each, we could pick any variable name here. It would make sense to say employee. I don't know why I keep hitting the X. Employees dot for each employee. Now we can say let name. Yeah, we could call this name, and I don't know. They're just gonna be divs, I think. I don't know if I'm gonna need to make a H1 or H2 or a paragraph or anything. I think we could just make a bunch of divs, put those divs inside the div container and split them into a grid. So I'll just give them the name of whatever it is, whatever property. So let first name equal employee, or sorry, not doing that yet. Document dot create element. It'll be a div, and then first name dot inner text equals employee dot first name. So it'll be smart to do it this way because we could just copy paste, and then I could press Control D to just replace first name with last name, and then ID, and then phone. So we could just do it quicker that way. So let first name equal document dot create element or create element div, and first name dot inner text equals employee dot first name. So we're looping through all of the employees, okay, with the for each, and then I'm setting employee as a temporary variable name to represent each of these objects, right? So we're looping through each employee, and by putting employee here, we're calling this employee and then this employee. So as I loop through it, I can get that employee dot first name and stick it into this div that I just created. And then I'll copy this whole thing, paste it and paste it and paste it. Okay, the second one will be the last name. So I'll just select this and press Control D. In VS Code, you can press Control D and it'll highlight anything that matches what you just highlighted. So if I highlight first name and press Control D again, now you can see 3 of these are blue. So I can just type last name, and it changes all three to last name at the same time. So they're a useful shortcut. And then for this one, Control D again, and we'll type ID. And then for this one, Control D, phone. Okay, and that's it. We just created all the elements, and then we filled the element with the value. Now that all that's left is inserting all of these into employees container. Okay, so I created all these, but the problem is though, let's see, what is the problem? I think we have a problem because if I try to insert can we do this? Let's see. Oh no, okay, yeah, we just need to do it here. There's no problem. Just after that, just insert into employees container. So employees container dot append child. Oh no, there is, okay, one more thing we need to create. I created a div for first name, last name, ID, and phone. But I should also create one extra container. I guess we could do it after. Let me just delete that for a second. We'll do it again, but we need to create one more div. Let container equal document dot create element. Create another div to contain all of the employee information. Okay, so each employee will be inside a div, and each div for each employee will have 4 divs inside for first name, last name, ID, and phone. So this is going to be the container div. So inside that, we're going to say container dot append child first name, and duplicate that. Do last name, ID, and phone. So we're creating these divs for the first name, last name, ID, phone, and container. And we're putting all these into container. And then we're going to insert the container into employees container. So employees container dot append child container. I don't know, it makes sense to me. We'll check it real quick and see if it worked, but hopefully it works. But grab Illustrator. So here's what I'm doing. This is the employees container, the one div that I created in the HTML. That's gonna be Oh look, I didn't mean to check it already, but looks like it worked. Got all of them in there. But anyways, that's the employees container. And then for each employee in the array, I'm looping through that and I'm creating a box for the first name, last name, ID, and phone. And then I'm creating another div to contain all of those. Alright. And I'm sticking all of these inside that one. And then I'm sticking that into the container. And since I'm looping through each of the employees in the array, I'm doing that for each employee. So I got 4 employees, so doing that with all 4 of them. Does that make sense? So again, we've got our main container, and then in the script, I'm creating an element. I'm creating a div for the first name, last name, phone number, and ID. I'm creating another container. I'm sticking all of those into that container, and then I'm sticking that container into the main container. So for each employee, I'm doing all that, and I'm sticking it into the main container. And then right now it looks like this. John Doe, 1001, Sarah Connor, Sylvester Stallone, Jimmy 2 times, Vinny Calypso. I don't like that name I came up with, that was lame. So 5 of them. I kind of wanted 4 though, so it'd be even number, but whatever. Now we need to just style it nicer. Currently each employee is it's in a column, but what can we do about that? We could, I guess, split each container inside the container, or each of these containers that's holding these. We could make that display grid and then split it into 4, and then split the main container into just a single column, I guess. So basically, instead of making this display grid with 4 columns, I meant to make the inner div display grid. So right now, employees container is display grid, but I want to make container display grid. So the one that I'm sticking the first name, last name, ID, and phone into, let's split that into 4 columns. But what's the easy way to do that? We could just say employees and an arrow div. So for any div that's a direct child of employees will be display grid, and we'll have all that. So that's all you need to do. Just add an arrow here and div. Okay, if you just put a space div, then all the divs, including the first name div, last name div, all of those will be affected by this. But we just want the direct child, which is going to be the outer container. These are the direct children, the big box inside the bigger box. The little boxes, those are also divs, but they're not direct children of this one. That's why they won't be affected. So you can see here now we got John Doe 1001, 555. We could make this look like a nice table. We can add some background colors, I guess. Um, what should we do? Just add a background color for now. And what else? Make some borders around the divs inside this div. Um, or we could do a border bottom on these. Border. Oops. border bottom, let's say 4 pixels, solid. Oh, we got a line underneath. Let's also give it some padding, like 10 pixels maybe. Give it some space. And we could also create a header for all of this. So at the very top, I could create another div here. And I could say first name. Actually, no, I need to make this div have more divs inside. With first name, last name, ID, and phone number. Last name, ID, phone. So now the top row is giving you the heading basically. We could make that like stand out a little by maybe giving that an ID or class equals uh, table header, and then here we can say for table header font weight bold, just to make those bold. We could also change the background color of table header. Background color, just pick something a little darker than the coral color. Darker or lighter, I don't know. Go darker. And wait, it didn't change. Table header. Did I spell it the same? Dot table header. Oh yeah, no. The reason why it's not working is because this is more specific than just table header. So we just need to say hashtag employees table header. Now it's as specific as that one, so it should work. And let's just change the color to FFF for white. And I didn't want the border color to change to white, but color also changes the border color, not just the font color. But that's because I didn't specify a border color when I said border bottom here. So I could just say hashtag 000. Now it's black. Cool, so we have a table, like an employee database. You can make the font bigger if you want. Zoomed into 100% right now, but I don't know. The rest of this is not really JavaScript anymore. I'm just styling it. But might as well. Let's go to Google Fonts. And let's use Josephine Sans. Let's go with that one. Okay. And I don't want that super thin one, so let's pick a normal weight here. Go with regular and bold 700. We'll just copy that. And we can link up here. And we can take this font family and use it. Josephine Sands. Copy that and put it. It's just applied to the whole body. So body, font family, that. A bit nicer looking. You could increase the font size. Just increase the whole employees font size. Make that 1.3 em. Make it a little bit bigger. And then that's it. Don't really need to do more than that. Questions? Or you need me to show you the code, or you got it? Or did you want me to upload it? Okay. I'm in the wrong folder? No, I'm in the right folder. Okay, yeah. Assignment 3, that's the stopwatch. I don't know if this is an assignment. I guess why not? Let's just make everything an assignment that we do. Where did I put it though? Inside loops? Yeah. Okay, so I'll just put it in there. Geez, there it is. Okay, it's just gonna be called loops. Welcome. Cool. And we could have like a default array like with that many people in it. And let's look at object-oriented programming so that we can see how to create a form to fill out some values and then press submit and then add new employees to the list. And I gotta refresh my memory on how to manipulate cookies, but if you ever go inspect, and I forgot which tab it was under. Application. Yeah, you can see here there's cookies. You could store cookies and then you can use those cookies as like temporary database. There's a few other ways there's also local storage to store stuff into. You can see key value. You would store key value pairs. But yeah, I haven't done it. I tried it once just experimenting, but I'll have to refresh my memory before I show you that. But you could store basically objects in there and then request those objects and fill up your page with them. That's what cookies are for. That's what other websites use your cookies for. When they save your cookies, the cookies get saved in your browser and it just makes like visiting the site a little bit quicker next time or more personalized based on what you did last time you were there. Um, okay. Alright. If you guys don't have more questions on that, let me show you a few. 'Cause every time I teach this class or any class, I don't always do the same thing. So last time I was doing something completely different. Here, let me open this with Visual Studio Code. So last time we did this, I had some exercises every day for the class. And one of the exercises you can see here. Well, one of them is pretty much like what we did earlier. When we created the form, if the user's age is under 21, say sorry, you can't enter. We already did that one. So what else? And then here's another one that I did with the other class. Maybe we should do this because I think it's simple. Given a string, return a new string with the reversed order of characters. So how would you reverse a string of characters with JavaScript? And I've got two different ways to do it, and it requires a for loop. So since we're talking about for loops, maybe we should look at this. Okay, so here, let's just look at it real quick before we try to repeat it. So I've created a function called reverse characters or reverse chars, right? And this function takes in a single parameter, which is the string that you're going to pass into it that you want to reverse. Okay. Inside the function, we're going to create a new variable called reversed word, which is going to start off as an empty array. And then we're going to loop through the string. So we're going to say for let I equals 0, I is less than string dot length, I plus plus. So we're looping through that string that we passed into it, whatever word it is. And we're saying reversed word, this array, dot unshift, which unshift adds something to the beginning of an array. Remember I showed you some array methods. You have push, which adds something to the end, adds one or more elements to the end of an array. Pop removes something from the end. And then you have unshift, which adds something to the beginning. And then we have, where is it? Shift. Where's shift? Shift removes something from the beginning. But unshift, you can see adds something to the beginning. So if you unshift, go through one by one, starting from the first character of whatever string you passed in. Let's say we passed in hello. Imagine that's the string. You're going to loop through this. You're going to look at the H first. And this reversed word, which is an empty array, you're going to unshift the H into it. So you're going to add the H to the beginning. Then you're going to look at the next one and you're going to add the E. Then you're going to look at the next one and you're going to add the L to the beginning. Then the other L, then the other O. And you're going to end up with a backwards hello. Okay, if we did, instead of unshift, if I said push, then what you would do is you would add each character, you would add it to the end of the array. So you would start again with the H, but then the next word E, you would add it to the end. Then the L, you would add it to the end, and the other L, and that O, and you'd end up with the same word if you just did push. But since we're doing unshift, you would reverse the order. So, oops, let's delete that hello. That's one way to do it, and then another way is so string.split. Split is a special function that's only for strings. When you split a string, you you have to first pass in, like, what do you want to add between the strings when you split it. And just these two empty quotes here just means add nothing between. And it creates an array out of this. So we create an array, we split all the characters, we create an array out of it. And um, then with the arrays, you can call a reverse method. So it's a built-in method, reverse. Let me see if I can show you that. Is it here? Yeah, so you can see here reverse is a built-in array method that reverses the order of the elements in an array. So we reverse it, and we join it back with this join. Join basically joins everything in an array into a string, and then the quotes here means join it with nothing, just empty. If I put like a comma, then we would get a comma between each word or each letter. Here, if I put a comma, it would look for a comma to split by, but if we put empty, it just splits each character. And then we console log it. So there's two different ways to reverse characters. Let me see if we could do one real quick. Inspect. Because like questions like this, like little, like how do you reverse a string or how do you sort something? I hear they come up in interviews, but I wouldn't know because it's never happened to me. So, but it might be an interview question, like knowing how to reverse something with JavaScript. If someone's testing your JavaScript knowledge. So if I said create a function to reverse the characters, you would say, okay, let me create a function. Let's call it let reverse word equal. We start with a function. And we know this reverse word is a function that's supposed to reverse a word. So we need to pass in that word. Okay, so this function is going to take in a word. So we're going to look at that word. What are we going to do with it? We're going to first create let reversed word. Not for this one, I'm going to go with the first method real quick. That doesn't involve breaking the string into an array and then reversing the array with the reverse method. This one I'm just going to do it the first way, where we just unshift. So let reversed word equal empty array. And then we're going to say for let, well, we could use well, a word is a string, so it's not an array, but we can still loop through strings just like we can with arrays. Let me show you. If we have a word like let string equal hello, even though it's not an array, you can still look at string 0 and get the H, and string 1 gives you the E, string 3 gives you the L, string dot length -1 gives you the last letter. So just like an array with strings, you can loop through with a for loop. But I don't think you can do a for each. String dot for each. If you try that, you see string dot for each is not a function because it's not an array. For each is only for arrays. But the for loop works with strings as well. So that's one difference. So here we could use a for loop. So we could say for let I equal 0, I is less than word dot length, I plus plus. So we're going to loop through the word, and then for each letter that we come across, we're going to say reversed word dot unshift. We're going to unshift word I. And I think that's it, right? Am I missing something? Oh, oh yeah, reversed word is an array, so we're not done yet. We need to join. Let me show you what it looks like before I join it. So reverse word hello. And we get undefined because it's not returning anything. So if you want to see what the result of this is on that word, you have to eventually return something. So we want to return reverse word, reversed word. Okay, so let's try it again. Reverse word hello. And you can see there it gives us an array, but the array has the letters backwards. Okay, so in order for this to become a word again, before we return it, we need to say reversed word dot join, and join it by don't add anything between the letters, just empty space. So now if we check reverse word again, I forget to press enter. Reversed word dot join. Oh, we have to set reversed word equal to reversed word dot join. Otherwise, it's gonna join it, but that's gonna be like its own separate variable. So you have to, after you reverse it, you need to save that as something. So we're saving it again as reversed word, and then we're returning it. Okay, so now finally we get the backwards hello, and it should work with anything that we type in here. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. You can see whatever I type in there, I get the reverse in this one. That's a quick little exercise to reverse words using looping and using some array methods. So try it out. Let me copy paste it. And after you try that one, we'll look at how to do it with the other method. The other one's a little bit shorter, fewer lines. I'll give you guys a couple minutes to absorb that. Alright, ready to try the second method? Okay. Alright, so again, this method involves first breaking the string into an array with the split method. So if you have an array, let's say let array equal hello. If you do array dot split, and let's say you want to split it by the e. If I type in a e in here, then we just get h and an LLO. So it's splitting, it's looking for the e, because that's what I put in the split method here. I'm like basically saying if you see an e there, break it in half by that e. Or if I do split, actually, let's see what if it actually, you can see after I split the array, the original array is still there. So if you wanted to do something with this, you'd have to save it as a new you'd have to call it like let split array equal array dot split, and this time I'll split it with nothing there, just empty double or empty quotes, single quote, double quote, doesn't matter. But we're basically saying split it by nothing, just each character. Okay, now if we look at split array, we get the word, but split into an array by each letter. So if you had, let's say, let array 2 equal Bob, Sally, Joe. If we want to split array 2, but we wanted to like make this turn into an array with Bob, Sally, and Joe as the 3 separate values, then we'd have to separate by the commas that we have in here. So I would have to put a comma in here, and oh wait, sorry, why did I put that in an array? Jeez, okay, let me refresh the page. Meant let string equal Bob, Sally, and Joe. Notice this time I put a comma and a space. Comma and a space, because that's most likely how you're gonna have your string. So if you want to split that into an array with the string.split, if you want to have Bob, Sally, and Joe as separate array elements, then you'd have to do a split by comma space, and then we get Bob, Sally, and Joe. Okay, but again, if you just do split with nothing, then you get each character by itself. So we're doing the split with just single quote with nothing in it, okay? So if we want to create a function to reverse a word using that method, first we create a function, let reverse word or reverse chairs characters equal, and we're gonna create an arrow function, and it's gonna take in characters, and we're gonna let character array equal chars dot split by nothing. Okay, then we're gonna say char array dot reverse, because that's a built-in method. for arrays, we could just call reverse and it'll reverse the array for us. Then we can say, wait, first, I don't know if char array dot reverse will modify the original array, or is this gonna just return something new? Well, let's check real quick. Let's say we have an array, let array equal, just put numbers 1, 2, 3. Okay, if we do array dot reverse, we get 3, 2, 1. But what if we look at array again? Okay, it's still 3, 2, 1. So array dot reverse will change the original array. Okay, because sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it just gives you a new value that you have to save as a separate value. The original array would still be 1, 2, 3, and then you'd have to save it as something new. But in this case, reverse is a method that what do you call it, mutates the original array. Okay, so that means this is fine. Then we can say character array dot join after we reversed it. Join it by nothing again. Okay, and then return character array. Oh, actually, join. So array dot join gives us 3, 2, 1 here, but if we look at array, it's still an array. Okay, so in this case, we don't just return array like this. We have to set, because array char array dot join doesn't change the original character array. Reverse changes it. Join does not. This creates a new element that you have to save. So we say let new chars equal character array join, and then return new chars. Oh no, I hope that makes sense. So reverse chars, hello, we get ole. Okay, it worked. So some confusing concepts to understand. And sometimes when you call an array method or a string method, it might or might not mutate the original. So reverse doesn't change, or a reverse does change the character array, but join does not actually change the original. This one stays the same. This just returns something new that you can use. So in this case, we're returning something new and saving it as new characters, and we're returning that new characters. Make sense? Okay, well, it's break time. So let's take a break. You can think about that during the break. I'll copy paste it here too so you can have it. And let's pause this. Alrighty, I'm back. And there's more little exercises here that we could look at, but I'm gonna skip because these were supposed to be like different days. We did different exercises. But I think one that we should look at is how to do a bubble sort. How to sort. Let's see. I think I have it here. I created a video on this. Maybe I'll put that video for us to watch. But before we watch it, let me try to explain it a little bit. Oh, I got some other stuff here too. What is this? Oh, okay, yeah, never mind. We're not gonna do this. That's just an experiment I was doing. Okay. Where's my bubble sort? I guess I don't have a bubble sort thing here. It's too bad. The bubble sort, let me see if I could figure it out without seeing an example. I always forget. Let's watch the video I made on bubble sort. Forgot where I saved it. Well, it's hold on. I have hundreds of hours of video talking on YouTube, but I don't listen to it. Let's watch this one. Actually, we need to put this on watch together because you won't hear the audio like this. And I'll just copy this, paste it into here. There it is. Okay, here's my explanation of, and let me invite you guys. How do we create an invite again? Temporary room. Copy URL. Paste this in here. Okay, so if you join, we'll watch this quick video on the bubble sort. So this is, when you hear algorithm, sounds like a scary word. I guess it is in some situations, some crazy algorithms, but this one's a simple as it gets, I guess, for an algorithm. But then again, I guess you could call any function an algorithm. But this one is for sorting, and there's different sorting algorithms. Some are more efficient than others. Okay, here's my explanation of bubble sort in 3 minutes. Let's say you're arranging numbers from. You could play it. Or I'll click numbers from smallest to biggest. You're gonna loop through the entire array once for each number and compare the current and the next number. If the current number is greater than the next, you're gonna switch them. The JavaScript function for that, if you're using for loops, would look like this. So just outer for loop. Let me pause it real quick so we can look at this. So we're so to do this, to use a bubble sort, it's actually gonna require not just one for loop, but two for loops. You're gonna loop twice, which exponentially increases the time it's gonna take to calculate it. So you first have your outer for loop. Okay, you let I equal 0, I is less than array.length, I plus plus. And then you have a second loop inside, And instead of calling it I, this time we call it J. Just you could call it whatever you want, but we loop through again the whole array. Okay, but in the inner loop, we check if array J is greater than array J plus 1. And if it is, we switch them. Array J plus 1 equals array J plus 1 array J. So this method right here is like a little trick to flipping the values of something. Let me show you real quick. So let's open the console, clear this, and let's say we have an array. Let array equal 1, 2, 3, 4. Say array 0 is 1, array 1 is 2. And if you wanted to switch those, you could say array 1. Am I doing this right? We gotta put this like this in a array. Array 0, array 1 equals array 1, array 0. And let's see what happens. Okay, let's look at array. Now you can see it just flipped 1 and 2. It's just a quick way of flipping things. Just put brackets around it, and I just set it equal to the opposite. So array 1, 2, 3, 4 turned into 2, 1, 3, 4. Anyways, let's watch the rest of this. As many times as you have numbers in the array, and it's gonna do this inner block of code, which is basically go through each number and check if the current number is greater than the next number. If it is, they'll switch places so that the smaller numbers come before the bigger numbers. Okay, since you have 2 loops, you're repeating again as many times as you have numbers in the array. Let's say you have 5 numbers in the array. You're going to repeat 5 times 5 times, so 25 iterations total. So 25 steps basically. In programming, there's a thing called big O notation, which basically is a way of figuring out how efficient or how quickly you can solve a problem using an algorithm. And in this case, it's O of n squared, which is not good because as the number of items in the array grows, the time it takes to solve it will grow exponentially. Okay, so here's a graph representing that. Here's an animation to help you understand it a little better. We have a outer loop is represented by I, and the inner loop is represented by the J. So we're gonna check the current number and the next number. If the current number is bigger than the next, we switch them. If not, we go to the next. In this case, it's bigger, so we switch them. Okay, this case again. So it'll just keep going through, switching the bigger number with the smaller number if the smaller number comes after the bigger one. And it'll repeat that again as many times as we have items in the array until it finally solves it. Okay, it's again not the most efficient way. And just to give you a different algorithm to compare this to, here's a selection sort. Okay, selection sort works a little bit differently, but it still has a big O of n squared. So again, it's not the best way, but it is faster. And the reason why I think it's faster is because you're not going through the entire array each time in the inner loop. Okay, in the inner loop, you only go through the remaining unsorted items. So because of that, it's going to solve it a little bit quicker. You can see this one's still going through. So it's doing a lot of unnecessary steps, which is costing it time.
Okay, so that's it.
So yeah, that's my bubble.
That's it. Stop hearing my voice. Okay, so let's see if we can create a loop, a bubble sort. Let me close this. And I should have the bubble sort somewhere saved here. I guess not. This is the animation, but it's a SWF file, so you need Flash to play it. But so I can't click on it. Is this it? Wait, let me look at what's in here. Open with Notepad. Okay, yeah, here we go. I've got the two different sorting algorithms here. There's the bubble sort, and there's the selection sort, which was, as you saw in that animation, this one was a little bit faster than the bubble sort. Okay, so let me try to go through this. So we have an array of numbers in just random order, random numbers. Steps is just to, I don't know, to log how many steps it took, but it's not really necessary. So function bubble sort takes in numbers, and we first loop through the entire array with let I equal 0, I is less than nums.length, I plus plus. And then, so we're looping through each array item, but as we get to like the first one, for example, we do another whole loop and we check, now we're looking at the 3, and we're looking at if j, which is the 3, if it's greater than j plus 1, which is the 6. If it is, if this was bigger than this, then we would switch them. Otherwise, we don't do anything. We just move on to the next one. So we look at the 6. So the outer loop, that's going through each one, right? So we looked at the 3, we checked them both. The 3 is not bigger than the 6. So this one does nothing, right? Because it's only checking if the 3 is bigger than the 6. But the next one, we get to the 3. So in the outer loop, we're at the 6. So we're looking at 6. And then again, we're looking at the 6. Plus we're comparing it to what's after the 6, the 4. So if the 6 is greater than the 4, then we switch them like I just showed you, where we just put them in brackets and then switch them like that. And then just goes through the entire array like that until it sorts it from smallest to greatest. Okay. Let's test it out though. So let array equal, I just put in some random numbers, 3, 4, 5. Let's go more random. 1, 2, 7, 5, 8, 10. I don't know if the 10 will be counted as, yeah, actually it will be looked at as a number. So yeah, we could put a 10 and a 9 there. So we have an array with some random numbers. So if we want to loop through each of these, we can use a for loop. We can say for
I equal 0, I is less than array dot length I plus plus. Okay, so if we just looked at it like this, if we just checked what I was, right now it's gonna show 8 here because why is it showing 8? Typing I here, array dot length I plus plus. Why would it stop at 8? Not sure. But oh, because wait, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's why. Because there's 8 numbers, so it's showing an 8. Because I'm just typing in the I. So the I is gonna go from 0 all the way to 8. 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's why the 8 shows there. But if we looked at array I, we would get the 9. Okay. So this loops through each number. Now, if we just did one loop and we checked if array I is greater than array I plus 1, so that's gonna only check. So each time it loops through, like starting from the 3, it's gonna check if 3 is greater than 4. Then it's gonna check if 4 is greater than 1. It's gonna go through it one time. So this would only solve part of the sort. But let me do it in an HTML file because like this can't console log. So let me just open VS Code and let's just create like a separate thing next to this employee database. That's still there, but let's just add a separate function here. So let's go to the scripts and all the way past all this employee stuff. Start a new one. Let's say let array equal, again, some random numbers, 5, 2, 9, 3, 1, 6, 4, 7, 8. Okay, so we have our array. So if we want to loop through it, we'll say for let I equal 0, I is less than array.length I plus plus. If array I is greater than array I plus 1, then we will switch them. So we'll say array I, array I plus 1 equals array I plus 1 array I. Okay, so this will just go through one time and it will only sort whatever it can by going through one time. But if you just go through this one time, what's gonna happen? You're gonna end up with, see, it's gonna look at the 5 and the 2. If the 5 is greater than the 2, then it's gonna switch them. So you're gonna get 2 and 5 there. Then it's going to look at the 5 is going to be in the place of the 2 now, so it's going to look at the 5 and the 9. And then since the 5 is not greater, the 9 is still going to stay there. Then it's going to look at the 9 and the 3. And it's going to switch those. Then it's going to look at, well, basically you can see it already got past this. It's 2, 5, 9, but that's clearly not sorted all the way. It's just, it sorted it as much as it could by going through one time. So if we looked at the result of this right now, well, we got the for loop there. Let's save this and then just look at it in the console. Type array. You can see it's not sorted all the way. So it is different than the original 5, 2, 9, 3, 1, 6, 4, 7, 8. Now it's 2, 5, 3, 1, 6, 4, 7, 8, 9. So it's sort of sorted it a little bit. But again, that one loop is not enough. So instead of just looping through one time, you have to loop through it again before you do this. So you have to do an extra loop. So basically the same thing, except we'll call it J this time. And then paste this in. Oh wait, nope, not that. Then we'll do the if here again. So if array J is greater than array J plus 1, then we'll do the switch. So array J array J plus 1 is going to now equal array J plus 1 array J. Okay, so now we're doing, instead of just one loop, we're looping through the entire thing, not just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Right? Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, so instead of just 9 steps, it's going to be 9 times 9, because for each one we're going to loop through. So it's going to be 1 for the 5, 9 steps, another 9 steps for the 2, another 9 steps for the 9, and so on. So you're going to end up with 9 times 9 steps. So it's going to take a lot longer than just a single loop, but that should sort it. Inspect array. You can see it's sorted all the way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This one's kind of tricky to understand, but I don't know, I tried to explain it as best as I can. Hopefully you guys get it. Does it make sense? Or should I go through one more time? Anyways, that's a bubble. It's called a bubble sort. Because, I don't know why. Because you're bubbling through, I guess? I don't know. Bubble. Because you're... Okay, forget why it's called bubble sort. It's just called bubble sort. And then I got another sort algorithm down here. This is the selection sort. This one's a little bit quicker because it doesn't have to go through 81 steps. So this one, we again have 2 loops. Okay, so this one we look at each item in the array with the initial loop. Okay, but then the next loop, we check, we say let j equal I plus 1. So we don't look at I, we look at what's after the I, or after the index. So we look at the next number inside the inner loop. And then if again we check if array I is greater than array j, then we switch it. It's pretty similar, but this is much shorter, I think. Because like I explained in the video, you don't have to look at the entire array each step you take. You sort the first. Wait, actually, where's the part that we actually check? This looks like the same algorithm. I don't know if this is actual selection sort. Let's see if this one works too, though. Copy. Let's paste over this one. Refresh. Okay, we have array, which is this. And I created a function called selection sort. So selection sort array. Steps is not defined. Oh, because we don't need steps. So selection sort array. Now we look at array, and it's sorted. So what does this one do different? I don't know, it's again doing the same first step, looping through an entire array. The only difference here is the inner loop, we're checking, well, we're setting j not equal to 0, but whatever I is currently at plus 1. So we're looking at the next number. And I don't know if we need to loop through the entire array. Anyways, that one works too. it's a different algorithm. Okay. But the bubble sort is a little bit easier to understand. You loop through the whole array, then you loop through the whole array again for each item, and you check if the first item is greater than the second item. If it is, you switch them. You move on to the next two. Look at them again. If it's greater, you switch. If it's not, you don't. And you keep doing that until the whole thing sorts itself. Okay. Anyways, let's move on from that. Let's see if we can do something with this table here. Let's create a form that we can type into and then add new stuff into this. But that would require creating new objects. Now, in object-oriented programming, you work with things like factory functions and classes. That's the next subject in here. So the point of object-oriented programming is you don't repeat yourself too much. You encapsulate data, provide namespaces, represent everything as objects. And then you use either factory functions or classes to create similar objects. And classes have something called inheritance. So you could create a class. Class is basically like an object constructor. So the simplest way to look at it would be the factory function, I guess. So a factory function is a function that returns a new object. Pretty simple concept, I think. You create a function like create person, which is going to take in some values, and you just return an object with those values. You set like the name equal to name, age to age, gender to gender, and you can add other things to it, like say hello could be a function of this object that alerts hello. But that's essentially what you're doing, is just returning an object, and that object gets its properties in here. You define the properties, and then the value for the properties you get from whatever you pass into it. Let's do a quick example, I guess. Let's inspect here. All right, so what should we create? I guess we'll do a car or something. Create car. Equal, it's gonna equal this function. So if we're gonna create a car using a function to create an object, we need to pass in some values like make, model, year. Okay, so it's a function that takes three arguments or parameters. And then once we get those, we can just return an object. And that object can have, again, make, which will be equal to the make, the model, which will be equal to the model. Pressed enter accidentally. You need to click shift. You have to press shift enter if you don't want to execute this. So shift enter to go to the next line without submitting that, and then year, which will be equal to the year. By the way, whenever you have something like this where the key and the value are the same, there's a shortcut to this. You could just not even include that. You could just do this, and that will be the same as that. So create car was going to create a car for us. So if we say create car, and we say Honda Accord 2010, you see it returns an object with that same properties. So that's a factory function. So it's just a function that creates objects. So here's another example. Create person Bob 50 male, and then Bob.say hello, because in this case I also added a method inside. It's just a function that says hello. And then we also have constructor functions. Now there's three different ways to do this. So there's the factory function. Another way is a constructor function. This one, it's a little bit different. So you can see we create a function called person. Again, it takes in the same values, but instead of returning an object, we say this dot name equals name, this dot age equals age, this dot gender equals gender, this dot say hello is again the same function. So it's very similar to this one, except we're not returning an object. We're setting this person properties using this keyword. Okay, and then when we want to create a new person, we say let Jack equal new person. It's kind of like the date object. When we create a new date, we say let today equal new date. Date is like a pretty much a constructor function like the one you see here, except it's not person, it's date, and it creates a date with its own properties. But the newest way to do it is using classes. Class is again similar to the other two. Class is basically just a constructor function, but with this class wrapping it. So you still have the constructor function inside. Like in this case, you have person, which takes in name, age, gender. In this case, the constructor takes in name, age, and gender, and you still use this dot name, this dot age, and you create it the same way. The advantage of this one, why you would use that over this one, is because you can inherit stuff. Like you could create a class based on another class. The best example for doing this would be if I showed you how to draw some stuff on the canvas. The canvas is another object that you have access to in your browser, and it lets you draw stuff on it. So to create a canvas, you just need to create a canvas element. But before I do that, this one was the factory function. So if we wanted to do the same thing, but with a class, oops, what am I doing? That's not a function. This one. Where's the function? I thought I wrote it, but never mind. We'll leave this bubble sort alone. It's not gonna bother us. Below that, I'll create a class. So let circle, or sorry, to create a class we use the class keyword. So class circle takes in a constructor which takes in value. So what might a circle have? Circle might have a color and a radius. This dot color would equal the color. This dot radius equals radius. And then you could have like other things in here, like this dot draw to draw a circle, but I'll show you that when we look at the canvas. For now, it'll just be a simple class that's going to create a circle for us. So if we have this class circle, we could use it now. We can go here, inspect, and we can say let circle1 equal new circle, and it's going to need a color, let's say blue, and a radius, let's say, I don't know, 5. Okay, we look at circle1. you can see we have an object with a color and a radius. Okay. We can also use a class to create like a new person, because we have these people here with the first name, last name, ID, and phone. So if we want to create a new person, we could create a class person, which would take in first name, last name, ID, and phone. Did I put ID with a capital? No. Okay. So that's going to take first name, last name, ID, and phone. And then you're going to have to say for this dot first name equals first name. This dot last name equals last name. And just copy paste this a couple times. And I'll do Control D on this to change this to ID at the same time. Control D on this to change that to phone. And then if we want to create a new person, we can say let, well, you could give him a name, like let Bob equal new person. You're gonna have to give him a first name, last name, and all that. So we'll say first name is Bob. Last name is Smith. We need, and here's a nice thing about classes, as you can see, as I'm typing in here, it's letting me know that the person requires a first name, last name, ID, and a phone. So in case you don't know what you're supposed to pass into it, it already knows because there's a class called person, and it already knows what arguments it needs. So it's telling me here I need ID next. So type give it an ID, 110, 100, I don't know, 6, and then a phone number, 123. We'll just make this a string, 123, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. Okay, so if we check Bob, we can see Bob is an object, and it shows us that it's a person here. So it puts the person in front of the object, so you know that it was created using the person class. So basically we can create a function. We can create a form that we can type into, and then the form can take that information that we pass into it, and we can create a new person out of that, and then we can add it to the list or add it to our array of people or employees. Okay, so yeah, if we want to do that though, we're gonna have to create a form. So after this employees, maybe we create a form down here, form with some inputs. Type equals text. What else do we need? We should give these IDs so we can grab each one. So ID equals, this will be first name. I don't know why I'd capitalize that, but first name. What else do we need? Maybe put a placeholder to let the person know what they should type in there. First name. I think that's it for the attributes. You guys remember inputs, right? If we create an input type text, it'll just create a little input that you can type into. But we're giving it an ID so we can do something with it with the JavaScript. So next one is last name. Call this last name. This one will be ID. ID equals ID. Okay. This will be ID. Paste that in there, and well, this one could be input type number, but it doesn't matter. We'll just keep it text. This one, phone number. Let's see what that looks like. It's just ugly form down here, so we need to give it some style. First name, last name, ID, phone number. We should probably use. We could just put it inside a container. Well, the form is the container itself, so let's go to our CSS. But before I do that, though, let me give you guys some time to create the form. So just make a form with some inputs in it for first name, last name, ID, and phone. And also, while we're here, let's also add we're gonna need a submit button. So you could create an input type equals submit, or you could create a button type equals submit. I'll just make it a button. I'll say add employee. And when we click it, it will submit. Every time you click this button, though, whenever you have a form, if you submit the form, by default, it's gonna refresh the page. Because usually what forms um, do is they're supposed to have like an action attribute, which basically would have to be equal to some kind of file, like a PHP or JavaScript file, something that will take all the form inputs and do something with them. But it also, if you're gonna use it like that, you would also have to add a name attribute. But since we're not using it the traditional way, we don't really need that. I'm just gonna like disable the default behavior of the form and just do my own custom thing with it. So just do it like this for now. Anyways, you guys, did you create the form yet? Let me know when you're ready to move on. And we'll just make this your fourth assignment. Fourth assignment will be to create this employee database that will also have this form that we can add more employees to. I'm already seeing a problem though. Might have to get into some more complicated stuff like Ajax or asynchronous JavaScript, because once the page loads and we are seeing our information already, if we do stuff in the background like add new stuff to the array, we're not gonna see it unless we refresh the page and it gets saved in our cookies or something. So I don't know how we'll avoid that. We'll just figure it out as we go, I guess. Actually, no, it shouldn't be a problem. Let me see. What if I manually add something right now? Let's say employees or employee contain. What did I call it? Employees container. So we have our employees container. What if we tried to add something to it? Dot append child. Actually, we can't append child. Let's just try appending something. Hello. Oh yeah, it gets added. So no, it shouldn't be a problem. We should be able to add stuff. All right. Okay, good. So you guys have the form ready? Should I move on?
I'm good.
Okay. All right, so we have our form. In our JavaScript, we need to create now a function that will create a new person and basically add it to the end of this. So we're gonna reuse some stuff that we already have, like this whole first name equals document.create element by ID. We're gonna have to do all this again, I think. Yeah, we might have to do all that again. Let me see. So we created our person constructor or person class. Now let's create the function to add a person. So we're gonna need to get this form. Actually, do we need to get the form? Yeah, no, we don't need to give it an ID or anything. I'll just use it as it is because it's the only form we have on the page. So we'll say let form. I don't even think we do need the form though. Let form equal document dot query selector. So I'm using query selector here instead of get element by ID because it doesn't have an ID, but we only have a single form in there, so this should grab the right object. So form is going to be the form element, and we're going to say form dot add event listener. Now when an event for the form is the submit event. Whenever I click the the button. Where is it? Whenever I click this submit button, what happens is it refreshes the page, and then traditionally, again, this is supposed to have an action attribute and a method attribute um, to do something with the data that's in there, but we're not using it that way. So we're gonna disable that default behavior. So we disable it like this. So form.add event listener submit, and the function. So when you have an event like a form submission, there's this event that gets passed into it. So the event is submitting the form, right? You can take that event, and I'll just call it E for short, and we can say E dot prevent default, and that will stop it from submitting. So now if I click this, it doesn't refresh the page anymore. But if this wasn't here, say I delete it, and I click this, you can see the page is refreshing. Kind of hard to tell because it's happening very fast, but this is quickly changing to an X, and then we can see this refreshing. But when we add this form.add event listener submit, and then pass in a function that takes in an event or E, and say E.prevent default, it won't refresh anymore. So that's step one. Next, what do we want to happen when we submit? Next, we want to get all the stuff inside the form. We didn't style the form yet, so let's do that real quick. Let's I don't know, I'll use display grid, I guess. Yeah, let's just see what we can do with that. So form. Maybe I'll create a form container just so I could center the form in it. So in the HTML, just create a section, I guess, and put the form inside. And let's just give this ID equals form container. Okay. So we'll make the form container have, it's gonna already be width of 100%, but let's give it a height so that we can center the form inside the container. So just make a section, the ID of form container, and put the form inside. And let's go to our styles and say form container. Start with a background color. Just pick a color. I'll go with this light coral, just a lighter color than the rest of it here. And you can see there, that's all it is right now. It just has the height equal to whatever content it has in there. So let's make it a little bit taller. Say height. Put a fixed number like 400 pixels, I guess. Okay, so it's taller now. And the form that's inside form container, form container form. Let's give that a background color. I don't know, let's just go with light cyan or something. Okay, so that one's gonna have a white background. Let's give that form a width. Let's say 300 pixels. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, that's maybe a little too small. Let's go 400. Okay, so there's the form. Now to center the form inside the form container, we just need to change the form container's position, or not position, display to either flex or grid, doesn't matter here. I'll just go with flex because I'm not gonna create any columns or anything. And I'm gonna say justify content center and align items center to just center it both vertically and horizontally. So it's centered in there. And then let's make the form inputs. Well, the form itself, we could make it display flex, I guess. Display flex. And then by default, it's going to put them next to each other, but I don't know, maybe you want it like that, next to each other, or you can say flex direction column to have it in a column. And we can give each form some padding, each input. So form input padding, let's say 10 pixels. Let's also increase the font size, say 1.3 EM. Okay, so it's a little bit bigger. And the button, that's a button, it's not a input, so yeah, I used button instead of input, so I could easily just switch it to input, but then it wouldn't have a closing tag anymore. And if I want the button to say something, I would have to put a value. Value equals add employee. But you could leave it as a button and just create a separate rule for button, but I just did that because now I don't have to do any separate button rules because that's all the styling it needs. Okay, so now we have a nicer looking form, I guess, a little bit. And now we're ready to like enter stuff in there and do something with whatever we entered. Okay, so that's all for the CSS, but you could style it however you want. That's just how I styled it. So if you want to look at that real quick, I'll scroll down slowly. Okay. Wait, open that. Okay, so in the styling stuff, you should already know how to do, so let's move on to the script. Alright, so far in the script, we prevented the default action that the form does. So we stopped it from refreshing the page. Next, we need to create a new person based on, we're gonna use the person class here. So, but we're gonna have to take in those values of the inputs. So we have to grab all of these elements now. So we're gonna say let first name equal get element by ID, get element by ID first name dot value. So we want to get the value of whatever is inside. Currently the value is nothing because there's nothing in there, but as soon as I type something and then I click this button, Once I click the button, that's when I'm gonna that's when the form submit is gonna fire. So that's when that event is gonna happen. So that's when it's gonna check all the values of the form. Okay, so inside the form add event listener submit, that's where we need to grab all those elements. So let first name equal document dot query selector, and we could just grab the form hashtag first name. You don't have to do that. You could just use document dot get element by ID, I guess. But there's just another way to do it. So you could do a query selector and get the first name inside form, or you could do get element by ID and just get first name. I'll probably do that because it's a little bit shorter. So we need first name, last name. So I'm gonna double click this and press Control D and say last name. Control D ID. Control D phone. First name, last name, ID, phone. So we're grabbing all those. And actually, we're not just grabbing the element. We're not interested in the whole element. We're just interested in the value. Dot value. Not sure if we need parentheses after this or just no. I think just value is enough. So let me just test it out. So we're getting the value of each of these. Let's try console logging all those values, or at least one of them. Console.log first name, let's say. Let's see what happens. So I'm going to inspect console. If I click add employee, we get nothing, right? Just blank because I didn't type anything in here. But if I type David and I click add employee, we see it console logs the value of whatever is in there. Okay, so that's working. So I'll give you guys a couple seconds to add that. And then test it out. See if you can click submit and then get the result of whatever you typed in the form. And right now it's only looking at first name because that's the only one I'm checking. But you can check the others too if you want to. And let me know if you guys have questions.
None.
Give me a thumbs up if you're ready to move on. Okay, Dayun's ready. Because she knows I'm just gonna upload this later. Camilo, should I move on? No, wait, okay. Wait, you ready, Camilo? Is that your thumbs up or Dion's? I can't tell.
No, that's that's mine.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so we're able to grab the value as soon as we submit. It's gonna grab the values. So next, what are we doing? Instead of console logging, we could just create a new person. So we can say let employee um, actually it wouldn't, we don't need to do that. Actually, we could just say employee equals new person, and the person will be first name, last name, ID, and phone. Oops. So that will create us a new object. Then what we can do is add the object to this employees array. So we can say employees dot push employee. Okay, but if we just do this, you're not gonna see any updates. Let's say David Kazarian 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 5 5 5 5 5 5 5 5 5. I click add employee, nothing's gonna change here, because we're not updating, we're not refreshing the page to use the new because this one, these first initial employees that we have, all this loads when we start the page. It does all of this. It checks, it creates the things, and then for each employee, it does all this. It appends child and all that. But this employee gets added later, so it gets added after the page has already loaded. So, but if you look, if you inspect and you check employees, you should still be able to see the new one that got added. So now there's 6, and we can see the last name, the 5th person, is an object that was created with the person constructor or class, and we can see it has my information, but it didn't. This happened after the page load, so it doesn't get inserted here. So if we wanted to insert it again, we'd have to do which one? Oh, we'd have to do all this again, I guess. Unless we saved that information in our cookies. So the alternative to manually inserting it again using the append child and all that, we could do that, or we could save this information in our local storage with the key value pairs. And then in the top of the code, we could write somewhere that when we refresh the page, or when the page loads, that information will get added to the array, and then it will load in there. But I don't know if that's going to be easier or if we just do this right now. Let's do this right now because it's more obvious how to do it. But then if we do it this way, Yeah, we could just copy this whole thing. Copy that entire thing. You know, we could even make this a function. Yeah, that would save us from repeating steps too much. But let me just show you just by copying this. Since we called this employee, it should work. Because in here we're creating. Wait a minute. Yeah. Let me just leave a comment here so I know where this is starting. Paste. Okay, so here's where that's the old stuff. This is what I just pasted. And also let me put a comment here too. This is all the stuff I'm pasting. So what do we do here? We create the elements and we put employee dot first name dot last name. Okay, and we have employee here already created, right? We say employee equals new person, so that object exists. So we can use, and it has the same name here, employee. So it should work fine. I think let's try it out. Save that and let's see what happens. Oh, something happened. Identifier first name has already been declared. Oh, okay. Because I'm using the same name here. What should we do? I guess we could call this instead of first name because it's using the first name. We can't do that. Same name. One is for the actual value and one is for the element. So we'll call this one element. We'll just add an EL at the end of these. ID element, phone element, and then last name element, ID element, phone element. Okay, so we just changed the name, so there shouldn't be a problem with that. Let me refresh, no more errors. Okay. What happens if we try to add? Okay, we get another error. Append child, parameter 1 is not of type node. Okay, so why is that happening? Because we're still using the first name here. It should be first name L, last name L, ID L, and phone L. Now let's try it. Okay, and there we go, it got added. Except, where's my first name? It added the others, but not the first name.
You forgot to put EL, sir.
I forgot to put what?
EL.
Oh, here.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, so now we could do this. I could keep clicking it and keep adding more. But you could change the information here and add the new information. So you can see that's a cool way to do it, but if we refresh, it goes back to the original 5. So if you wanted to stay, either you'd have to store this information that we're adding here in a database, but then connecting to a database, you could have like an SQL database or a NoSQL database, like with MongoDB or something, different database types. And then the whole connecting to a database and getting stuff from the database, that could be very complicated for us right now. So next best thing is local storage if you wanted it to stay. But it's already 9:40 and obviously we're not gonna have time for that. Let me just do a quick local storage just so you can see it's not that hard. If you say local storage, you can see it's already coming up here. And if you type dot, you can see it already has some things you can do here, like local storage dot set item. And we can say, let's say name Bob. So if I save this and open this, and we go inspect, we check our application tab here. We look at local storage, you'll see name Bob. And then if we want to do something with that, we could say local storage dot get item. And then we could get name. I think that's how we do it. Or let's do let my variable equal local storage dot get item name. Let's see if we could get it. If I click here and say my variable, you'll see Bob. So it's getting stuff from the local storage is pretty easy compared to getting it from an actual database. With a database, you have to connect to the database and then send like a request to get stuff from the database. And then you have to do things asynchronously. So you have to use like async await, all this complicated stuff. But with this local storage, it's simple as that. So if we were gonna try to save the information that we add here, probably should do it through local storage. But I'll save that for next week, I guess. For now, this is good. This is, if you did this, this is enough for now. So this could be your 4th assignment to create this employee database that you can add stuff. It's going to be temporary now, but we'll look at how to save it a little bit longer. So one thing we can do since we have a few minutes, I copy pasted a lot of stuff. It's never good to do that. That's not good practice. So what we could do is, instead of repeating all this stuff here that I copy pasted between here, the original one where I copied from, it's all this stuff, right? Well, we could put that all into a function. We can create a function, let's say let create, or let add employee equal a function. It's gonna need to take in stuff, I think. Yeah, we can't really use it just like that because this one looks a little different than this one. It's not exactly the same, but we could create a function called add employee, and it's gonna have to take in some information. Well, I guess it could just take employee. That's all it would need to take, really. Let me see if we can do this real quick. So add employee takes in an employee. So take all this stuff. Oops. And cut it out and paste it in here. Let's just get rid of some extra unnecessary lines. So add employee is going to do all this stuff based on the employee that we pass into it. So inside this one, the employees dot for each, we'll just do add employee. So it should take this and pass it into this, and then just do all that stuff, except we just created a function out of it, which we can reuse now. We can use that add employee in place of all this stuff. Let me just paste it in there. Just cross our fingers. Yeah, it still works. Cool. So just deleted a few extra lines by doing that. So we just do it one time, save it as a function called add employee. So every time we want to reuse all of this, we just use that function instead. And we could use it as many times as we want without having to repeat all these steps. Alright, I'm gonna save this, I'll upload it. I'll put it in here as new assignment. Okay, it's still in the loops. I already uploaded this, didn't I? But I called it loops. Well, here's an update to loops. I'll just rename it, I guess. Rename it to assignment 3. I'll just delete this one. Call this, or assignment 4, I should say. Assignment 4. Paste it in there. And let me go to the OneDrive classwork. Create stopwatch. Are you guys done with the stopwatch? Because just notice the due date is tomorrow. Alright, let's create the new assignment now. Am I giving these assignment names? Nope. Create employee database using classes. I'll give you the instructions later, but for now, that's, you know what to do. The sample is there, so C sample. Copy link, copy, paste. Alright, that's your 4th assignment. And have a good weekend. Let me give you the sign out code.